There is a folder on my laptop I named just in case. I made it 3 years ago, on a Tuesday night, after I got off the phone with my mother crying because my brother needed help again, and somehow, that was my problem. I saved everything in that folder. Bank statements, text messages, voicemails I had transcribed word for word, a spreadsheet I updated every time money left my account and never came back, 31 entries, $47,000 over 6 years. I never showed it to anyone. I never planned to. It was just for me, the way a person keeps a journal, not because they plan to read it back someday, but because writing things down keeps you from going crazy. I should have named it something else, something that sounded less patient. Because the night my parents broke into my apartment and took my car title out of my desk drawer, I realized that folder wasn't just for me anymore. It was evidence. Let me start from the beginning, because the beginning matters. I am 29 years old. I work as a senior graphic designer for a mid-sized marketing firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I have my own apartment, a 1-bedroom, I lease myself. No roommates, no help. I drive a 2021 Audi Q5 that I bought with money I saved over 2 years of freelancing on weekends. I paid cash. No loan. My name on the title. Nothing else. I have never once in my adult life asked my parents for a single dollar. My brother Ryan is 33. He has never, as far as I can tell, paid for anything himself, without someone catching him when he fell. He is not a bad person. I want to say that clearly because I know how these stories go and I don't need him to be a villain. He is just a man who was never asked to be responsible, so he never learned how. Our parents loved him the way people water a plant in the wrong pot too much, too often, until the roots rotted, and the whole thing became fragile in a way that couldn't be fixed without starting over. He got divorced 18 months ago. His wife left, and she was right to. She had been carrying him financially for 4 years, covering his half of everything because his business, a pressure washing company he started on a whim, had more debt than revenue. When she left, the business collapsed, and the debt didn't. He moved back into my parents' house in Raleigh at 32 years old, and they put fresh towels in his bathroom and made his favorite dinner the first night and told him everything was going to be fine. I found out about the debt from my mother. She called me on a Wednesday evening in October, voice already soft in the way it got when she was about to ask for something she knew I might say no to. She said Ryan owed a private lender just under $30,000. The lender was not a bank. It was someone Ryan had found through a former client, the kind of arrangement that doesn't come with grace periods or polite letters. She said the lender had given Ryan 60 days. I said I was sorry to hear that. She said, Claire, he's your brother. I said, I know who he is. She said, we don't have that kind of money sitting around. I said, I don't either, which was a lie, actually. Not a comfortable one. I had $34,000 sitting in a savings account that I had been building for 2 years toward a down payment on a house. I had been quiet about it the way you learn to be quiet about things in a family like mine. The way you stop mentioning good news because good news just means someone knows where to look when they need something. She didn't push further that night. She said okay and changed the subject, and I thought maybe it was over. It was not over. 2 weeks later I was visiting for Sunday dinner my mother's pot roast, which I still cannot resist, even now, and I overheard a conversation I was not supposed to hear. My father and Ryan were in the garage with the door pulled mostly shut. I had gone to get my jacket from the car and I stopped in the hallway when I heard my name. My father said, "She's not going to just hand it over," Ryan said. "She doesn't have to know what it's for," my father said. "Your mother thinks if we ask about the car," and then a door somewhere shifted and the sound changed and I didn't catch the rest. I walked back to the kitchen. I sat down. I ate the pot roast. I talked about my job and the weather and I smiled the way I had learned to smile in that house, the one that doesn't reach all the way. I drove home that night and I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long time. My Audi was worth approximately $34,000 on the private market. I had looked it up casually a few weeks earlier, not with any intention, just the way you check these things. Low mileage, excellent condition, full service history. A private buyer would pay more than a dealership. I had not been planning to sell it. But the number was not a coincidence. $30,000 in debt, $34,000 in a car. I could feel the math from where I was sitting. I went inside and I opened my laptop and I opened the folder I had named just in case. And I started making a plan. I want to be clear about something. I did not set a trap. I did not scheme or plot in the way that word implies, like someone rubbing their hands together in a dark room. What I did was protect myself. There is a difference, even if it doesn't always look like one from the outside. The first thing I did was call a private buyer I had found on a local car enthusiast forum 3 weeks earlier when I had been idly browsing. His name was David. He had messaged me first, asking if the Q5 was ever for sale. I had said not right now, but maybe later. I called him on that Monday and told him I was ready to sell. We agreed on $33,800. I asked if we could process the sale through a licensed escrow service, which sounds complicated but is just a neutral third party that holds the money and the title until both sides confirm everything is in order. David was fine with that. He was buying the car as a gift for his daughter and he appreciated the clean process. The escrow was open Tuesday. The sale was set to finalize in 5 business days. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Ryan. I did not change anything about my behavior. I drove the car to work Wednesday and Thursday like normal. I parked it in my usual spot. I kept the original title in my desk drawer at home, in the same green folder where I kept all my important documents, which my mother had seen me reference before, on more than one occasion. Friday afternoon, my mother called to say she and my father were going to be in Charlotte Saturday and would love to stop by and see my apartment. They had not visited in 4 months. I said, of course. I said I would make lunch. I went to the hardware store Saturday morning and I bought a small combination lockbox, the kind that bolts to a wall. I installed it in my bedroom closet. I moved the green folder into it. In the desk drawer where the folder had been, I placed a different manila envelope. Inside that envelope, I put a photocopy of my title, with a single line written across it, in red ink. The line said, already in escrow. Sale closes Tuesday. I made a nice lunch, grilled chicken, a salad. My mother complimented the apartment and asked about my work and helped me wash the dishes afterward, and was warm and normal in the way that still sometimes makes me forget for a few hours how things actually are between us. My father was quiet. He talked about a show he'd been watching. He told a story about a neighbor's dog. At no point did either of them mention Ryan, or money, or the car. They left around 3. My father hugged me at the door. My mother told me to get more sleep, that I looked tired. I watched them pull out of the parking lot and I went inside and I checked the desk drawer. The envelope was gone. I sat on my couch for about 10 minutes. I was not surprised, which is its own kind of sadness. I was not angry yet either. I was just very, very still. I texted my mother. Safe drive home. Love you. She replied with a heart emoji. I went to my laptop and I confirmed that the escrow was still processing. Title was in the system. The sale would close Tuesday morning. The $33,800 would transfer to my account by Tuesday afternoon. I went to bed early. I slept better than I had in weeks. Sunday I didn't hear from anyone. I went for a run in the morning and got groceries and made dinner and watched a show, and it was a perfectly ordinary day and I felt almost normal except for the part of my brain that was quietly waiting. Monday morning, 7:42 a.m. My phone rang. It was Ryan. I let it ring. He called back 2 minutes later. I answered. He said, Claire, hey, I need to talk to you. I said, hey, what's up? His voice was the kind of careful that meant he had rehearsed. He said he was in some trouble financially, which I already knew. He said he had a way to fix it, but he needed my help. He said he had found a buyer for my car and the buyer was offering good money and he just needed me to sign over the title. I said, where did you find a buyer for my car? He paused. He said, through a guy I know. I said, Ryan, I don't have the title anymore. He said, what? I said, I sold the car. The sale is processing right now through an escrow service. It closes tomorrow. There was a long silence. Long enough that I counted it. 7 seconds. He said, that's not Claire. That car is worth $30,000. I said, 33.8, actually, which will be in my account tomorrow. Another silence. He said, you knew. I didn't answer that. I said, I'm sorry you're in a hard spot. I hope things work out. I hung up. My mother called 40 minutes later. I was in the middle of a work meeting, and I let it go to voicemail. She called again at noon. I was eating lunch at my desk. I let it go again. She called a third time at 2:15, and I stepped out of the office, and I answered. She did not say hello. She said, Claire, what did you do? Not a question. A statement, the way she always delivered accusations, with the certainty of someone who had already decided what happened and just needed me to confirm it. I said, hi, Mom. She said, Ryan had a buyer for your car. That money was going to fix everything for him. And you sold it out from under him. You did this deliberately. I said, I sold my car. She said, you knew what we were planning. I said, how would I know what you were planning, Mom? Nobody asked me anything. The silence on her end was different from Ryan's. Heavier. She was recalibrating. She had walked herself into an admission, and she was looking for the exit. She said, we were going to explain everything. Your father and I just wanted to have the paperwork ready so we could show you how it would work. So you'd understand the plan. I said, what paperwork? The title you took from my apartment? The silence again. I said, you came to my home under the pretense of visiting me. You took a document from my desk drawer. That document was a photocopy, by the way, which I left there on purpose. But that's beside the point. You took something from my home without asking me. My mother's voice, when it came back, was quieter. She said, we are your family. I have thought about that sentence a lot since then. The way she said it like it was an answer to something, like it was a complete argument on its own. We are your family, as if that phrase dissolved all other considerations, overrode every boundary, erased the $47,000 in that spreadsheet and the years of being the one who was expected to show up, and the title taken from my drawer, and the plan they made about my property, without involving me. I said, I know you are. She said, then how could you do this to him? I said, Mom, I sold my car. I used the money I saved for 2 years to buy that car and I sold it because I needed the money. I didn't do anything to Ryan. I just didn't do something for Ryan. She said, he is going to lose everything. I said, he was going to lose everything anyway. Selling my car would have bought him 4 or 5 months and then he would be right back where he is now. She said, so you gave up on your own brother. I said, I gave up on being the only solution. She started crying. It was not manipulative crying, I don't think. I believe she was genuinely in pain. My mother loves Ryan in the way that people love something they have invested too much in to assess clearly. Her grief was real. It just wasn't my responsibility. I said, I love you. I'm sorry this is hard, but I'm not going to fix this. She hung up. I went back to my desk. I answered 3 emails. I sat through a 1 o'clock call about a rebranding project and gave feedback on a color palette and asked clarifying questions about a client's logo, and I was, as far as anyone in that meeting was concerned, completely fine. At 4:30, I drove home in the Q5 for the last time. David was picking it up Tuesday morning before the escrow closed, per our agreement. I had already cleaned it out over the weekend. I took the little air freshener shaped like a tree that had been hanging from the mirror since I bought the car, and I put it in my jacket pocket, and I sat in the parking lot for a few minutes. Just in the car, not going anywhere. I thought about the first time I drove it. October, 2 years ago. I had worked 6 straight weekends designing logos and social media templates for small businesses, and the money had built up in a separate account. I checked every Friday morning like a ritual. The day I hit the number I needed, I cried in the Whole Foods parking lot. Not because of the car, because of what the car meant. Because I had wanted something and I had worked for it and I had gotten it entirely by myself and nobody had needed to sacrifice anything for me and I had done it clean. I had never told my mother any of that. It would not have mattered if I had. Tuesday morning, David came at 8 a.m. with his daughter, who was 24 and had the kind of smile that fills a whole face. She asked if she could take a photo with it before they drove away. I said of course. She put her arm around the hood and grinned, and her father took the picture on his phone, and I watched, and I felt something I did not expect to feel, which was not sadness exactly, but something adjacent to it. Gratitude, maybe. That the car was going somewhere it would be appreciated. The escrow confirmation came at 2:17 p.m. $33,800 in my account. My father called that evening. This was unusual. My father was not a caller. He communicated through my mother almost exclusively, the way a country communicates through an ambassador. When he called directly, it meant something had shifted. His voice was tired. He said, Claire. I said, hi, Dad. He said, your mother is very upset. I said, I know. He said, Ryan is it's not good, honey. The lender isn't going to wait much longer. I said, I know that too. He said, I don't understand why you couldn't have just talked to us first. Before you sold it. I said, Dad, you came to my apartment and took something from my desk. He said, that was wrong. I know that. Your mother, she just got ahead of herself. I almost laughed. Got ahead of herself. My mother had coordinated a visit, located a document in my home, removed it, and handed it to my brother to use in a transaction involving my property, and the characterization was that she had gotten ahead of herself, like she'd started decorating for Christmas before Thanksgiving. I said, it wasn't just Mom. Silence. I said, Dad, how long have you known about Ryan's plan to use my car for the loan payoff? He didn't answer. I said, I'm not trying to fight with you. I'm trying to be honest. I found out about this 3 weeks ago. I had time to think, and I decided that helping Ryan this way would not actually help Ryan. It would help Ryan for a few months, and then we would be back here. And the next time it would be something else of mine. A signature on something. My credit. I don't know. It would be something. He said, that's not fair. I said, I have a spreadsheet, Dad. 6 years. $47,000. The line was very quiet. I said, I never asked for any of it back. I know I'm not going to get it back. I'm not bringing it up to argue. I'm bringing it up because I need you to understand that this has been happening for a long time and nobody noticed because I never said anything and I am saying something now. My father made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Something that came from somewhere in the chest. I said, I love you. I love Ryan. But I cannot keep being the floor everyone stands on. He said, very quietly, I didn't know it was that much. I said, I know you didn't. We stayed on the line for a moment without speaking. It was not a comfortable silence, but it was an honest one, and that felt like something. He said, what's going to happen to your brother? I said, I don't know. But whatever happens, it needs to happen to him, not to me, instead of him. We said goodnight. I heated up leftovers and ate at my kitchen table and looked out the window at the parking lot where my car used to be and thought about nothing in particular for a long time. 2 weeks later, Ryan negotiated with the lender and arranged a payment plan. I don't know the details. My mother told me in a brief text that did not include an apology or any acknowledgement of what they had done. Only the information itself, delivered in the flat tone of a news update. Ryan is handling it. The business might be salvageable with some restructuring. I read the text twice and put my phone down. She called the following Sunday. She called the Sunday after that. We talked about small things. Her garden. My work. A show we had both been watching independently. She did not apologize and I did not bring it up again, because there are some debts that don't get repaid, and I have learned to know the difference between fighting for something and just prolonging pain. But on the third Sunday, near the end of the call, she said something that I think was as close as she was ever going to get. She said, "You always were the one who knew how to take care of things." I said, "I learned early." She said, "I know." And then she changed the subject. I still have the folder on my laptop. I have not added anything to the spreadsheet in 2 months. I do not know if that means something has changed, or just that nothing has happened yet. I am trying to hold that uncertainty without tipping it either way. I found a house I like. 3 bedrooms, good light, a backyard with an old oak tree that the listing describes as a feature, and I believe them. I have been approved for the mortgage. I close in 6 weeks. I have not told my parents yet. Not because I am hiding it, but because I am still learning which things are mine to keep private and which things are mine to share, and I am trying to make that distinction from something other than fear. The air freshener from the Q5 is still in my jacket pocket. I found it this morning when I was getting ready. Pine-scented, half-faded, shaped like a little tree. I held it for a second, and then I put it in the cup holder of my new car, a sensible, modest sedan I bought last month for $11,000 in cash, and I backed out of the space, and I drove to work in the early morning. Everything quiet, just the road and the faint smell of pine. I did not save my brother. I saved the money that was going to save my brother, which is a different thing, and the difference is everything. He is still standing. So am I. That is the best I can do, and for the first time in a long time, the best I can do feels like enough.